everybody. The last time that I did this workshop, I wasn't going to mess with it, mainly because of the arm. For those of you who aren't up to speed, I broke this arm just over a month ago. I've got steel plates and screws holding it together, and it's a mannequin arm right now. It doesn't move like the other one, so if I seem to be sitting here weird, that's what's going on, and it's why I'm sitting instead of standing and walking around stuff. Javi is my macaw that I have at the house, and last time, it's been, I guess, 2 years ago because of how long I've had him, I got that bird, and what was it, 3-4 days later, I brought him in and he sat through a workshop, which is how tame and amazing and how sweet he is. I love the topic of animal totems because I'm a total animal fanatic. I think animals are better than people. Don't make me give the list because it'll hurt somebody's feelings. I really do think that animals are amazing, and I think that there is such a misconception about animals in general and about animal totems. And what I'm going to hope to do today in everything that we're talking about is give you some ideas on what they represent, what they mean, how we connect with them, how we differentiate what their purpose is. A lot of people are like, is it an animal totem? Is it not? Is it just an animal that's in my life? And we're going to try and work through some of that sort of stuff. And then we're going to talk about some ways you can deepen those connections. We'll get to this a little bit later, but since I have it in my head, because I just did it, I just did a mental inventory just to let you know how much animals matter to me. I have 13 animal or animal reference tattoos on my body at this point. They're that big of a deal to me. I have all of my personal animal totems tattooed on my body. And when I say totems, that's going to be the part that throws most people off. When you talk about animal totem, everybody wants to know what their power animal is. And we're going to talk about the difference between that and what regular totems are and all of that sort of stuff. And what I would like to encourage everybody to do, because I'm super casual, and once I get going, I'll just start throwing everything out there that I know, and I will warn you, there will be many side divergent tracks. There will be several times that I forget what the heck I'm even talking about because I'll get way over there. But what I want you guys to do is, if there's something that actually comes up as a question as we're going, flag me down. You're not going to offend me. The reason that I'm offering this is so that you can walk out of here with useful information, stuff that you can plug into your life. And if there's something that's going to help that be something you can plug in, speak up, ask a question. You probably will ask something that somebody else is wondering about, or something that they didn't even think to wonder about, and they're going to be like, oh God, I'm so glad you asked that. And so don't be shy. We're super casual around here anyway. Uptight yogis doesn't make a lot of sense. So welcome, I'm glad you're all here. When we talk about what are animal totems, they're really a form of spirit guide. They're a specific type of spirit guide. And the reason that one of the first distinctions that I want to make with it is that you may well have an animal in your life that is a kindred spirit, that is something that you are sharing your life with. And it may be a representation of an animal totem that you have. But as far as animal totems, we're talking about the animals, even a little bit more than a specific animal, like, all hawks instead of a hawk. And you'll find that, like, when I get into the macaws, I was talking about the macaws earlier. I have this type of macaw at home. They're 2.5, 3 foot from beak to tail. So when Javi sits on my arm, Javi's here and Javi's tail is here. And they have about 2,100 pounds per square inch biting force in their beak. They can bite through a broom handle. They can take a finger off. They're incredibly powerful creatures. They're incredibly smart. They communicate. A lot of people think that they just mimic things. When we have supper, and only when we have supper, my bird says, "Is that good?" And if you give him a bite, he says, "That'll do." My bird says, "Step up," when he wants picked up. My bird says, "Night night," when he wants put in his cage and covered at the end of the night. And if you don't do that, he then starts screaming in a tone that I think is meant to stun small jungle animals. You have no idea how loud these creatures can actually get. So you may have like a one-on-one, well, that is the specific, that bird named Hobby is the one that's there. But using Hobby as an example, Hobby is the 4th blue and gold macaw that's come into my life, and I've never bought one. I've owned 4 of them. I've never bought one. I've had probably half a dozen more. Well, I've had 4 macaws, so make that like 8 or 10 different birds in my life. I don't buy birds. I rescue them. Jan will tell you that every now and then, it doesn't happen often, but we'll be sitting at my house, Jan will be over to visit, and I'll stop the whole evening and be like, somebody's going to give me a bird. And within 24 hours, somebody will message me and be like, will you take this bird in? And almost always I do. I've had 3 of them happen that way. And they will come to you in very, very interesting ways. But when we talk about spirit guides, if you think guardian angels, spirit guides, loved ones on the other side, ghosts, there are a lot of different forms that non-physical beings take. And our animal totems are the embodiments of those animals that we want to borrow their characteristics. It isn't nearly as much candy. I don't want to mislead you. It's not like the companion bird or you're friends with a wolf or the giraffe that drops by to visit. It's not necessarily that. It's about tapping into the qualities that those animals have and being able to use their powers or their attributes, their energies, all of the things like that. And so there are energies that we can draw characteristics from to help us out with our life situations. And you will find at times, I was going to say, is your pen working? I saw you scribbling. There are times that you will have like a lifelong animal totem, or in my opinion, you will have at least 7 of them that travel along with you. But one of the things that I want you to get, shamanism versus a lot of other practices. As a shaman, we believe that if you can talk to one animal, why can't you talk to all of them? And I think most people treat animal totems as, oh wow, that one animal has picked me and that's the only one I can relate to. And I think that's a very limited way of looking at it. And in a little bit, we're going to be talking about the king of the animal totems, that is the one we want to connect with, that allows us access to all of them to be able to use them in different forms and different fashions and things like that. So when we talk about how they appear to us, physical form is a legit thing. And when we're trying to see how, or we're trying to discover our animal totems, there are a couple different ways to go about it. And I'm going to start with the way that I learned. I have to tell the full story because this will show you guys my personality, and you can worry about me. A lot of people do. I moved to Rolla right after high school to work at a radio station. I was a DJ. And in Rolla, especially back then, there weren't a lot of people that think like I do. It's an engineering town, engineering college town. And so I went to the local health food store because I was like, I'll find somebody that thinks the way I do at the health food store. I walked in and the lady behind the counter gave me a stone. She was like, I've been waiting for you. She gives me a stone and started with, you need to come back tomorrow. I have somebody you need to meet. Cool. I was, right out of high school, young, impressionable, not nearly like I am now. So I show up the next day, get in a car and drive for an hour and a half out into the country with this total stranger. Like I said, you can be worried for me, it's okay. She takes me to this little house in the woods, seriously, and this little lady comes out and says, I'm going to introduce you to your animal totems. And she talked about this stone. That's not me. I talk in this tone. I can barely hear her, I swear to God. And she took me through this meditation. Super, super easy, light, straightforward meditation. I want you to focus on your root chakra. Ask whatever animal is there to show itself. Tell me what it is. And it worked. And then she went to the second chakra, and it worked. And then she went to the third one, and it worked. And we kept going, we kept going, kept going, kept going. And we get to the third eye, and this is one of my favorite parts of the story. We get to the third eye, and she goes, what do you see? And I said, is it okay if there's 2 of them? And she goes, anything's okay. And I said, why are there 2 of them? Because there was a hawk and a black panther. And she goes, how should I know? Ask them. And a hawk and a panther in the third eye. Third eye is psychic perception, right? It's intuition, the ability to perceive, to see, non-physical, all of that sort of stuff. I made my life doing psychic readings for people, that sort of thing. And so I asked him, I was like, why are there two of you? And I hear that the panther travels on the ground like we do, so it sees things from one perspective, and the hawk will see it from a higher perspective. And for me to be able to do the work that I was going to do in my life, I needed to be able to see things from multiple perspectives to be able to help people to understand not only where they were, but where they could get to. And I was like, wow, that totally makes sense. And so, of course, I thought, wow, we've got it pegged down. Then we get to the crown, and I was like, do they have to be real animals? And she goes, what are you seeing? I was like, it's a phoenix. And she goes, works for me. And so we're going to go with it. And so that was one of the biggest experiences. And when we were driving back that hour and a half to Tulsa, or to Raleigh rather, it hit me that none of the animals from my childhood or from my life showed up in that meditation. You know, like if anybody would have asked me, I would have said my childhood dog Mingo, because he was the one that made my childhood okay. He was my best friend. If you would have asked me what my animal totem was, I would have said that. Or if somebody were to ask me just off the cuff, I'd be like, well, I guess a German Shepherd, because I always have at least 3 of them. And so, you know, you tend to think that that's what it's going to be. I was so impressed that it wasn't, because it made me think, okay, those things showed up. My preconceived notion wasn't there. What I thought it was going to be wasn't what it was. And that made it mean more to me than if it had just been the ones that were there. Because I could have written that off as, oh, well, that's what I wanted it to be. That was something that was familiar and comfortable, so of course that's what I saw. And the fact that it wasn't that was actually pretty cool. And so guided meditations, a very intuitive person might give you a reading and tell you what your animal totems are. I've done both with clients. I've sat with them and come up with a list of them. I have taken people through guided meditations to find their animal totems. And when you hear me talking, you heard it from the very first part, I believe you have one that goes with each chakra point. We have 7 main chakras, so I think everybody starts out with 7 of them. And that can be a little overwhelming. Everybody's trying to figure out what their one animal is. I'm like, oh no, you got 7, and now you have to figure out where they go. Not just where they are, but where they go. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But it's an entirely different concept in working with them, rather than just thinking, you know, what is my power animal? And most people think, you know, what animal would I be if I wasn't a human, is how they usually approach that. And I think it's a much bigger topic than that. Animals that repeatedly show up in various areas of your life. When I do soul retrieval work with people, I tell them to watch for the animals, and I want to hear about the animals that show up in their life. They're like, well, what do you mean? And I give the example that we have hawks everywhere around here. You're going to see a hawk almost any day around here. If a hawk lands in your front yard, if a hawk swoops right in front of your car when you're driving down the road, if a hawk I went to a yoga retreat, my Indian name's Shadowhawk, so hawks are a big deal. First yoga conference I went to, I was in concrete jungle downtown Dallas, and a hawk circled over the building we were in all day. And so I'm like, it's the one that's trying to present itself to you. You know, we have crows everywhere all the time as well. Every time you walk out of your house, a crow is cawing at you, screaming at you, won't leave you alone, bordering on harassing you, that counts. You know, the praying mantis that climbs in your windowsill and is staring at you and stays there all day and does that, that's what we're talking about in finding an animal totem that's presenting itself to you. You have repeating dreams about a certain animal. That's going to count in that regard. Animals that go out of their way to show you or act very out of character in any regard. One of the ways that I knew that I really related to animals early on, and it's not one of my totems per se, Mom used to take us to the zoo when we were young, and you know, Springfield Zoo, and you know, I say when I'm young, that's 50 years ago. There was a camel that would come up and follow me everywhere up and down that fence, and I remember even saying to my mom, okay, isn't that weird? And she'd be like, I'm going to stand here, you go walk over there, and it would follow me. there'd be 20 people there trying to look at it, and it didn't matter where I went, it was following me. So either I smelled delicious, or there was some connection thing that was there. And I think it goes along with shamanism because we believe in animal totems so much. I'm that guy that when I walk into the house and everybody's like, be careful, the dog doesn't like people. I'm like, watch, and I sit down and the dog comes and gets in my lap. I just naturally can relate to animals very, very well. And I think a lot of it is that I kind of think like they do. I think very instinctually. I'm very much try to live in the moment as much as possible. I think that there are a lot of things that tie people to them more, and there are some people that are very dissociated from animals. You know, I'm assuming nobody in this room, but there are some people that just plain don't like animals. I don't particularly like them, so there we are. They can be a physical representation, but like when I tell people to look in the soul retrieval process, I'll tell them to look for animal totems. I tell them that if everywhere you go, you see a little kid with a teddy bear, I want to hear about your bear totem. If you start, every time you turn on TV, it's something about sharks, then okay, and especially if it's not Shark Week, then yeah, that counts. And so I believe that spirit has this beautiful thing, whether it's animal totems or intuition or spirit guides or energy or whatever. I believe that spirit works through the path of least resistance. And that's why sometimes the dumbest people that you know will say the most profound, enlightening spiritual things. Or that person that's in the checkout line at the grocery store will say the one thing that you needed to hear because their mind was open and susceptible enough for spirit to send that through. It was the path of least resistance. And so you'll find that a lot of times we try too hard, first of all, and we don't allow things to present themselves with grace and ease. And I think that grace and ease is a wonderful thing. I think grace and ease is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Dreams, conversations, TV shows, things that come up as reference points over and over and over, all of that sort of stuff. And one of the things that you're going to want to figure out about your totems first, one of the very first things to figure out, and this is where we're going to go way off a direction that most people don't think about, is what element do they come from? Are they an air creature? Are they an earth creature? Are they a fire creature? A lot of people think those are harder to find, but not really. And I'm going to explain as we go. Water creatures seem very self-explanatory, but the cool part is that some of them double and triple up. And so I've got a couple of examples here. I'll use the one that I've used all along, but we've got to realize that our elements also govern specific energies that have to do with our interaction with the world, the vibrations that we put out into the world. So we have thoughts, words, actions, and beliefs or emotions. So the direction of north in my practice is air, that's thoughts, and that would be the macaw, various other birds. If you think about sugar gliders, you know what I'm talking about, the little cute furry things that can glide along the air and all of that sort of stuff. Butterflies, all those sound really nice. Mosquitoes, gnats, fruit flies, and I have people all the time that I say that and they're like, oh, gross. Do you know what fruit flies survive on? The sweet, wonderful substances of the world. Don't we all want to just survive on the sweet, wonderful substances of the world? Mosquitoes sound like a terrible totem. What do they live on? The life force energy, which is what the blood represents. So it's telling you to be able to literally tap into that life force energy that's there. Or, let's take it to what are flies before they fly? Maggots. And so when we think about maggots, they are an amazing totem for getting rid of the old dead parts of our personality, our energies, getting rid of old habits that are slowly killing us, getting rid of if you have a horrible relationship and you have that breakup and that divorce, you want that fly or maggot totem to come and eat up all of that shit that's left over from that experience. And so even the ones that seem like, ooh, ick, they have really amazing purposes and meanings and reasons. So we've got our thoughts, which are governed by our air. So if we're having trouble thinking about something, we want to pull in an air animal, and that's going to help with our mental process. If we go to earth, that's going to be our words. And the example that I use, and please don't limit it to this is to get your mind going. Wolf. Wolf is a quadrupedal animal that has 4 feet on the ground, and I think they're great for words because they bark, they whimper, and they howl. They are very vocally communicative, and so that's going to cover our words in a great sense. And if we get into working with everything, like I love bringing in the creepy ones for people because people don't want them to be animal totems, and then there's some of the most powerful ones. Earthworms. If you have a situation that's very difficult to get through, do you know what earthworms do? They consume the obstacle in front of them and pass through it. And so it's about nothing can stop me, not even raw dirt, earth itself. I can burrow through whatever that is. When we think about turtles and various things like that, very low to the ground, snakes and different things like this, they're very grounding, very rooting. I'm a yoga teacher, and when we do cobra pose, I always tell people to do this with their head instead of this, because cobras aren't looking up in the sky. They are ground creatures. They're looking at the stuff that's on their level. And so they're actually trying to help you figure out how to do things in a very material, physical, earth plane, where to place your next footstep, literally kind of a thing. We were talking about moose earlier. Moose is an amazing earth creature. When they step somewhere, they actually leave a dent in the earth because they're freaking huge, and they're powerful, and they're strong. And so all of the earth animals aren't the same. When you talk about a turtle and a moose, that's about as different as you can get. And so they're going to bring a different energy into the way that you use your words. A moose is going to be when you need some strong, powerful words to come out. And you can say something with absolute certainty and nobody's going to try and steer you away. A turtle is going to help you to pick your words very carefully and slowly so that you get your point across in a very clear and distinct way. And so when you think about the qualities of the animals that's there and the element it comes from, it's helping you to lock into what it is. Just because this is the hard one, can anybody tell me what a fire animal would be?
Like fire ants?
Fire ants, perfect, it's in the name.
Scorpions?
Scorpions, yes. Fireflies, salamanders. There are certain crabs that live in the ocean, and they only live on thermal vents, and they can take temperatures up to like 1,400 degrees and they live. There are all sorts of very intense things. And then some of them, I would say that peacock, when those feathers come up and all of that, that looks like a fire growing, those shimmering colors and all of that. Or think about the bright red on a rooster's comb that's there that looks very fiery and that sort of thing. A phoenix, of course, is made of fire and would be an amazing one for that. And then water, it's easy to think about fish and whales and dolphins and all of that sort of stuff. There are all sorts of water beetles. There are frogs and various things that are amphibious. And when you get to things like frogs, now we're getting to the mix and match variety of it. A frog lives on the ground, but it swims in the water. There are sea turtles and there are land turtles and there are tortoises. A duck is actually tri-elemental, and I could even take it into all four if we wanted to. They walk on the land, they fly through the air, they swim in the water, and if you look at some of the mallards and some of the different varieties, they have a shimmery, iridescent, fiery color to their self that's on there. That one's pulling in all of them at once. And so we have to be kind of open and general in the way that we look at them.
So, like dragonflies, would that be?
Yeah, dragonflies, because look at the wings and the colors and that vibrance. And dragons breathe fire, so dragonflies are going to have that fire element that's in there.
And they're born of water.
And they're born of water.
And they fly in the air.
And they fly in the air, and they land on things that are grounded. And so, yeah, you get to where you can look at them, and so many of them, as you guys are pointing out beautifully, actually cover more than one element. But when you get into the element, it's going to come a little clearer later. When you've got a problem you're working on, it's going to help you to decide which one to call on. If we end up like we think we're going to with 7 of them for the chakras, then we want to know which one to call on in that moment to help with what it is that we're trying to do. If you're trying to think something through, don't pull in an emotional animal. Think about humans. Don't trust your emotion. Those bastards lie. Trust what you know, because your emotions will take you way over there a lot of times. However, our thoughts will keep us from feeling and experiencing stuff, and so we don't want the thought one when we're trying to be all emotional about stuff. And of course, when we can get one that encompasses all of them, we can have our thoughts that are influenced by our emotions, that are very grounded and rooted, have the action to move forward and the understanding to do it, and we get to where we can weave all of those parts together a lot more thoroughly. But it starts with even the idea of what that is. And so when I said that there is a king of all animal totems, it's the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird is an amazing, now a lot of people would say that a Thunderbird, there's my Thunderbird tattoo, a lot of people would say that a Thunderbird is not an actual creature. First of all, we're talking about spirits, so let's just move over that part. But tell a Native American that the Thunderbird isn't real. I dare you, and I really, really want to be there when you do it. And the reason that I think Thunderbirds are the king of all of them is because the Thunderbirds in the Lakota tradition, Cherokee tradition, a lot of the First Nations traditions, it is the great bird that represents all of the elements. What happens in a thunderstorm? We have the wind blowing in, we have the flash of fire in the lightning, we have the rain that falls, and where does it fall? To the earth. So that creature embodies, like actually is, all of those elements inside of its own self. And so the Thunderbird is considered to be the king of the animal totems, and in native traditions there's a thing called the Thunder Beings, and the Thunderbird is the king of the Thunder Beings, and Thunder Beings means the usable energy that is available to us in a spiritual capacity. So when you're trying to figure out how to launch the new business that you think is your truth, then you want to call on those thunder beings for the usable energy to make that happen. I don't feel like I have everything it takes. Oh, they do. And so you channel that energy in through from them, and suddenly you have the answer and the power and the motivation and the energy and everything you need to be able to make these things happen. And so the Thunderbird is the embodiment of all of the elements. It's available to absolutely everybody. And it is the one that I think if you're going to start trying to call out for a totem, I think it's the one you should start with, realizing that it may or may not be a personal totem. It's more universal. So I'm going to borrow from Christianity for a minute, because whether we're Christians or not, we're brought up in that society, and a lot of that language helps to shortcut things a lot. So if I was to say a personal, specific animal totem, that would be like a guardian angel. And so we think that, everybody's got an angel assigned to you, Bill, take her, and Jeff, you've got him, and that's how it all works. And then we have the archangels that are available to everyone. Anybody can pray to Michael. Anybody can pray to Gabriel or Raphael or these sorts of things. So if you think about the Thunderbird being on like that archangel level, and you think about the other totems kind of being on like a regular angel level, I don't mean to put them down, but think about them on like second tier, then you're getting an understanding of the distinction between those things. And it allows you a way to access, work with them, connect with them. And even though I don't like playing the hierarchy game of anything is more powerful or better, because I don't like the better than game, our brains are geared for hierarchies. We love patterns. We love somebody sitting at the head table. It is very comfortable for us to have somebody that's on the stage that's the center of attention, and everybody everybody else that's focusing on it. It's one of the reasons, other than the fact that I've always thought I should have a stage spotlight and theme music that follows me everywhere, because that's my personality, it does create an entire dynamic. It's not that physically I'm above you a little bit, but it's not that I think I'm above anybody. I don't think I'm better than anybody. I don't believe that way. I actually think that's a bunch of horse shit to incite an animal totem. But I do think, I know, I can't help it, but I think that when we start looking at a hierarchy or a structure or a form, it gives us a lot more way to interact and work with it. And one of the things that I think spirituality runs into is the thinking brain that's used to working in our society. And we're used to, you go to work and there's a boss. You go to the hospital and there's the person that checks you in, and then there's a nurse, and then there's the LPN, and then there's the doctor, and then there's the surgeon, drawing on a recent experience. And each one of those has a greater degree of authority and governs a different aspect of all of it. So when we get into thinking about them in that way, it actually helps us to process it, I think. And so when we get into the Thunderbird, this king of all totems, as I put it, it brings us into one of the things that I think is so strange in the way that people think about it. Yes, animal totems may pick you. You may have an animal totem that is unique to you, and it's going to pick you, and that crow's going to scream at you, and it's going to make sure you know what's up, and it's going to, until you say, "Are you a thing?" and it screams real loud when you do, and you're like, okay, it must be. Yes, there's that. But once you start working with animals, if you can connect and communicate with a non-physical form of an animal, why wouldn't you be able to connect with and communicate with all non-physical animal forms? And so I think, and this goes back to my spirit guide workshop that I do, I always talk about everybody has their one main guide. And that's what people call their power animal. What would I be if I was an animal? I was named Shadow Hawk by the medicine woman who trained me. I would be a hawk, I would assume. A lot of people think it's the one that's in the crown. It's the one you most relate to. But I also talk about in the Spirit Guide workshop that we have what I call special agent guides. They're the ones that show up just for what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to leave that bad relationship, and suddenly this energy shows up. It helps you get out of it, and then it seems like it's gone after that. It's because it's a special agent. It did its job. Now it's off to the next assignment. It's got its next task to do. So you may find yourself getting into a situation where you want to call on a specific totem to borrow its energetic quality. And while we're on that, I want to talk just a little bit. I say talk a little bit. We could talk for hours doing examples about just this next part. So I'm going to give it to you conceptually, because if you get the concept, this is one of those things where I'm done saying the concept, I'll be like, thanks for coming. You've got everything you need to know. There's a guy named Ted Andrews. Are you guys familiar with Animal Speak, the book by Ted Andrews? If you're into animal totems, get it. It's probably the best one that's ever been written. It doesn't cover all animals. How could it? But the reason that he's amazing in the way that he works with animal totems, and it's the way that I work with it, I got it from him. I'm not original. He worked in animal husbandry and in zoos and studied animal behavior. If you want to know what a specific animal totem does, what does that animal do? They're not there to do something outside of what that animal does. You don't call upon a rhinoceros to go flying unless you want the thing to pick you up and throw you through the air. You don't think about a fish for flying unless it's a flying fish. You don't get into calling on a totem that doesn't match what we're trying to accomplish. And that's why we start with, is it an air, an earth, a fire, a water, a thought, word, action, or emotion? Which one is it that we're trying to accomplish? That's what I'm going to try and call in, because it's going to give me the qualities that I need, even more than that, to be able to move forward. And so I believe that if you discover an animal totem, the best thing to do is Google it and start studying it and find a documentary on it and watch what it does, learn what it eats, how it behaves, where it lives. Is it diurnal or nocturnal? I feel so smart right now. Is it something that is a predator or a prey animal? Does it have a long lifespan, short lifespan? Is it aggressive? Is it passive? All of these things are giving you clues as to what type of animal you want to draw in, or if one presents itself, what quality it is that you're supposed to borrow from it. And so you can call on any of them that you need for what you're trying to accomplish, or likewise with my special agent version that I'm talking about, you may have some animal you're like, okay, why am I seeing tigers everywhere I go? There was a stuffed tiger, there was a tiger on TV, suddenly they brought me my drink and there's a tiger on the cup. Why is this going on? And then you go and you research what tigers are about, and you realize that their stripes are orange and black, and that means balance because we've got the dual color, realizing we have a dual nature to ourselves. They're apex predators, so it helps you to go after what it is you're trying to conquer or achieve or get in your life. They're incredibly stealthy, so that reminds you not to broadcast to everybody what it is that you're doing and your plans, and that if you keep your mouth shut and you keep balance about yourself and you allow yourself to stalk with methodic prowess what you're doing, you will actually be able to capture what it is that you're wanting. That was actually very easy to follow along with, wasn't it? And when you start, sure, Shane, and when you start thinking about those things, that's it. And I always say, is it easy? Because my brain works this way. When somebody mentions an animal, even if it's an animal I've never ever heard of, I can look it up online for like 2 minutes and tell you what it's supposed to mean in your life, because I'm really good at translating animal characteristics. You know, let's take a simple one that we can all relate to. I have German Shepherds. I love dogs. What do we all say about dogs? They're a person's best friend, right? That means that they are a totem of loyalty. They are pack animals. They travel in packs out in the wild, and they really want to be there with you. And there's something that is capable of learning outside of their own scope of natural behavior. You can train a dog to do an amazing variety of things. So it's a great totem when you're trying to learn new things that are out of your comfort zone, or to be able to emulate somebody else's characteristics or some other quality from somewhere else. And I promise you, the more you think that way, the more you will think that way, and the more obvious and easy those connections will come into you. But if you get to where you start with, where does it live? What does it eat? Is it a predator? Is it prey? What does it do? How does it get around? You know, those sorts of things. It is an amazing, amazing way to connect with them. When I do connecting people with animal totems, we do a meditation where I have them imagine that they are sitting on a hill with the opening to a cave facing a body of water. And I'll say, don't try to figure out the animal. Figure out where it is first. Is it coming out of that cave? That means it's a land animal. Is it coming from the air? Is it coming from the water? Do you feel like it's coming straight from the sun? And you find where you're drawn to, and then you allow the image to slowly materialize to you. And starting with where it comes from actually helps you to lock in what it is and to understand what its purpose is that it's going to have for you. So with these elements, this is all very short because of the time frame that we have, and I would encourage you to try these things just a little bit more at home. I'm not going to count us into like deep meditations because it makes it really hard to hear the rest of the workshop. But I want everybody to just close your eyes for a second. And let's start with Earth. I want you to think about if you were standing outside in nature and your feet were to begin to grow roots. Think about connecting with the earth. Think about getting very rooted, very grounded. Think about the idea that earth is a very heavy element in energy. Think about strong as stone, mighty as a mountain, grounded, rooted, solid. Think about the idea of becoming so dense and so heavy that nothing could physically move you at all. Imagine what it would be like to connect with that earth. Now, earth isn't just heavy. Earth also grows things in abundance. It provides everything that we need in this earth walk that we have. So think about being that abundant garden that as much as the roots are growing down, the leaves are reaching up. Think about the beauty that comes from the earth. That there are the flowers and the plants and the trees and the beautiful things that come from this earth. Think about the idea how the earth provides for our nutritional needs. Everything that we eat comes from the earth in some form or fashion. Allow yourself to feel that very rooted, deep, connected thing, and realize that that corresponds to our words, our expression, the way that we communicate out into the world. Now I want you to imagine the sun shining down on your very rocky, stony, earthen self. And imagine it begins to warm it. And imagining that it's a spiritual, sacred flame, it's not going to burn you, but it's going to be like a hot air balloon. That fire is going to allow you to begin to rise up. So think about the fire burning away everything that's impure, burning away everything that's no longer wanted. Think about the light, the heat, the radiance. Think about the power that's in fire. Think about the actions that we might take in our life. And as you feel that flame growing and that fire building and the energy, the intense energy that is there in a fire, I want you to think about it beginning to rise up. And it rises up, I want you to allow yourself to become very airy. Imagine what it would be like to first feel the breeze blowing on you, and then imagine it blowing through you, and then imagine you becoming the breeze itself. Rising higher and higher, light and airy, floating like a feather on the breeze. Imagine yourself rising up into that space. And as you rise into that space, going into your thoughts, into the highest part of yourself, then we want to take all of that back down to the earth, and the easiest way to do that is to think about rain and allow yourself to become water. And falling back down to the earth into a pool of water, an ocean, a stream, a river, connecting into that flow, that fluidity, the tide coming in and going out. Think about the emotional quality of our own self being as deep as the ocean is, and allowing yourself to connect with that elemental quality that's there. And so if we start as the earth and we allow it to become fire, and the heat causes us to rise up into the air, and then once we're there it all coagulates and comes together, and then the rain falls back down to the earth, we've created a beautiful cycle of energy that encompasses all of those elements. And just let your eyes open. Now, I guarantee you, everybody had a different experience from what I just said. But in that, I think, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes that we just spent on that, don't you feel like you got kind of a connection of each of those elements? You're able to think about what they are. And what I want you to get out of that, the reason we actually run right through that, is because people overcomplicate stuff. What do you mean by earth energy? Well, what do you think earth energy means? It's grounding, it's rooting, it's solid. What do you think air means? And if you ever get the chance, which you'll have to make it, go outside, stand with your feet firmly on the ground, and go through what we just did. And I mean, feel how solid the earth is underneath your feet. Actually stomp your foot and feel how solid it is. And then allow yourself to feel that sun shining on you. I'd pick a better day than today. Let the sun shine on you. You feel that warmth, and it makes you want to come alive, and activity and energy and all of this sort of stuff. And then imagine what it's like. Pick a day with a slight breeze or a wind out there, and feel it first touching your skin. Then imagine it flowing through your entire body. Then imagine you becoming one with it, and you'll actually have a sensation of being the wind blowing. And if you think about water, rain, I think, is a very easy one, and it matches our rising up and falling down thing to complete that cycle. But you can also imagine what would it be like for the rain, if you were standing outside, like I was saying, not just to fall on you, but the same thing that I said about the air. What if that rain fell through you? What if it fell into you? What if you were a funnel, a rain gauge that was collecting that, and suddenly that water was filling us up inside? We are, our own bodies are the embodiment of all of those things. Our bones are earth. We breathe air to survive. We have a body temperature that is higher than the ambient temperature of the room. Most of us are working on the high 98 point whatever range, and the room is currently 71 degrees. So we're creating our own fire that's inside of us to sustain ourselves. Which one did I leave out? Water, which is, you know, we're like 70% water in our makeup. All of our cells contain water. So we literally, physically are the embodiment of all of those elements. And so when we think about the elements we're supposed to tap into for magical work and energetic work and spirit work and all of that, we realize that we're already the combination of all of them. So when people are like, how do I tap into those energies? They're already in you. That's what you're made of. You don't need to connect with them. You need to realize them. You need to recognize them. It's kind of my approach to God. Why are you looking for God instead of realizing you are God? Why are we doing all of this hunting and searching and wishing for when it's all right here, right now? Because most of us don't want to give ourselves that much power, because then we have a responsibility for that power that's inside of us. Most people are not afraid of their energies or their tasks or whatever. Most people are afraid of their own power. Snakes, I'm scared of snakes. I am very scared of snakes. Snakes mess with me. But snakes mess with a lot of people. Why do snakes scare a lot of people? Because they represent shedding your skin and becoming something new, and they represent claiming your own power. We're all afraid to touch our own power, because if you touch your power, you're responsible for it. If we live in ignorance, we had a whole thing in yoga where we decided that dumb people are happy, so our goal should be to get dumber. You know, the problem is you're also dumb, except you're too dumb to know that that matters, so you still win. Ignorance is bliss. There's a reason that saying is there, because ignorant people don't know enough to be unhappy about things. There's a beauty in not knowing some shit. And I think that a lot of times we know too much, and then a lot of times we don't admit what we actually do know. So when we go through and work with these, and the thing that I want you to get out of that, I gave you my example of it. I would invite you, like we said, we're going to Mexico for a shamanic retreat this next week. One of the things that we do is we stand on the beach with our feet in the earth, because you can actually stick your feet in the sand, and you can see the ocean, like the great grandmother of all water on the planet, under full sun in Cancun, and there's a breeze blowing. You can't avoid the elements, they're right there. But the real power is in realizing that you're recognizing something external that is inside of you already. And when you start thinking that way, then those elements are available to you, and you can use them in whatever it is that you're wanting to do. And if you go ahead and you tie in the thoughts, the words, the actions, the emotions, that sort of stuff. And again, I see some of you writing down, air is thoughts, earth is word, fire is actions, and water is our emotions.
Which directions do those?
So it's north is air and thought, east is earth and our words, south is fire and actions, and west is water and emotions. And I'll say this for Lisa, because we've covered this, haven't we, in a workshop already. That's the tradition that I learned. If you place those in a different direction, awesome, because it's ridiculous to say that there's only air in the north. Those poor people in the South are just suffocating, just asking for a gasp of breath. You know, a lot of those traditions come from where the indigenous people that practice these things are. A lot of them come from, you know, if you're in North America, south and fire makes sense to me, because the farther south you go, the hotter it gets, and the north wind blows cold. And so it's easy for me to think of that's air. But again, follow your tradition. I didn't start where I usually start with every workshop, and I'm going to correct my mistake right now. The medicine woman who taught me started every single lesson with me as, this is how I have learned. If you learned a different way, share it with me so we can learn from each other. Let's get that everywhere, please. Let's put that into the entire world. Let's get over the I'm right, you're wrong. Or as my brother says it, we live in an age where if somebody doesn't agree with me, they're the dumbest son of a bitch that ever lived. We live in that age. We live in an I'm right and everybody else is wrong. And I think it's much better to go, this is how I know. Tell me how you know. Because your way might actually make more sense in my head than my way does. How am I going to know if I don't hear it? You know, so that is that's the way that I assign them. And I would tell you that if you don't have a practice that incorporates that stuff, start there. And if something feels better to you, go with what feels better. Because I think it's amazing, I have to say this at times. Spirit work should feel good. Getting more God on you should feel good. Getting more spirit flowing into your life should feel good. Now, that doesn't mean there's not rocky roads and trials and tribulations to get through and obstacles and blocks and negativities and things like that we have to work through. But working through a block feels good. Maybe not while you're in it, but it does. I've been referencing my arm, and Jan has been around. She's my best friend. She's seen the whole thing from all the way through, and she sees behind the scenes. She sees all the stuff that you guys don't see. I have been turning this into a teachable thing to bring into yoga, into my smudging last night. I'm using it right now, talking to you guys in the workshop. A lot of people would say, oh, you had this horrible bad thing happen to you. Well, that would be a really, really crummy place to stop with your thoughts. Because there's a lot of amazing good that came out of it. You were here last night. I had to do my smudging an entirely different way because I can't hold my smudge bowl. And we talked about it afterwards, and Jan was like, that was the most present you've been in months, and that's the best version of that I've ever seen you do. Because I had to reach for something. I didn't just lean on what I know. I had to think and plug and connect in, and the limitation led to growth. And that felt good. And so I think that getting some more spirit on you should feel good. All of our animal totems, a lot of people are so sad at this part. All of our animal totems have positive and negative qualities. It's to help you to understand your habits and your tendencies. Rabbits help us to make huge leaps forward, but they also live in constant fear. Bears are powerful totems that miss several months out of the year because they have to sleep because there's nothing for them to eat. Did you guys know that bears don't hibernate because of the cold? They hibernate because food gets scarce in the winter. They actually hibernate because that means they don't have to eat. They got giant fur coats on. They're not worried about the cold. And the only reason I know that is because I have a bear totem, so I've studied bears. And when you start studying things, you learn interesting things like that. Most people are like, oh, it's getting cold, so the bears are going to hibernate. Well, no, they're going to hibernate because the cold means the food is scarcer, and that's why they hibernate. Yeah?
I use them to help me sleep. Whenever I can't sleep, I'm like, ooh, I'm hibernating bear.
I'm hibernating bear. I'm so hungry. I need to go to sleep. Yeah, oh, I get it. When it gets to winter, I would happily hibernate till spring. I don't like the cold months at all. I'd be fine with that. Wake up with a baby. That happens, you know. They give birth when they hibernate a lot of times. Yeah, they'll wake up with a baby. And they don't go to the bathroom the whole time.
That's the one.
Yeah. Everything's in there and processes through. And think about when you wake up and you got to pee. Oh, you don't know what it's like to wake up and have to pee until you're a bear. That's a thing. Well, they actually charge up their body, like they overeat and they overdrink and they fill their body up, and they have a special system in their body that kind of does a purification system with their own urine so that they can keep the water in their system and take the toxins out of it and put it into the solid waste matter so that the water that's there, they're not sweating, they're not urinating, so they have all of the fluid in their body that they need. They just have a way of separating the ick out from it so the water keeps doing what it's supposed to in their body. And it's amazing. I mean, animals and what all of them can do just blows my mind. The stuff that they can do is just mind-blowing to me. You know, there are some animals like roaches, you know, if we include insects and all of it, they can freeze totally solid, thaw out and come back to life. There's certain versions of frogs and turtles that do the same thing. You know, snakes actually hibernate as well. Snakes don't disappear in the winters and dying out. They actually just go underground and become totally dormant. You know, a lot of animals are just like trees. They look like they're dead, but they're not. Let it get over a certain temperature and suddenly they start coming back to life. And if you have a totem that happens to do that, then you're going to realize that you're super sensitive to environmental circumstances, and that you're that person. You know, I keep talking about I have a bear totem. I don't like going outside in the winter. I want to stay inside. I want to hibernate. I could crawl in bed and stay there forever, and a lot of my personality matches those sorts of things as well. We talked about their chakras, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Mine happens to be throat chakra. Think about how bears sound. You should hear me when I get mad. My mom used to talk about when my brother and I would get up as kids. My brother would get up, "Morning, Mom!" And I get up and go, "Ugh." Always been that way. Positive and negative totem examples. Can anybody give me another one? What are some positive negatives? Think about an animal. What's a really good positive negative about that animal?
So turtles, you mentioned turtles earlier, and that they're very thoughtful.
Yes.
Words to get their point across, but maybe a negative could be overthinking. I don't know.
Yeah, you can slow yourself down so much that you don't ever get anything out. Or the idea that, what do we say about turtles? They carry their houses on their back, which means they never have anywhere to go home to. It's always there with them. And so the idea that we literally have to take everything along with us everywhere, that sounds cumbersome. That sounds like hoarding. And so they have positives, they have negatives. This one, I think this one is hilarious. Squirrels gather nuts, right? And so we think, man, squirrels are great for preparing for your future and make sure you have everything that you need and all of that. And if you actually study up on it, you realize that squirrels can't find 90% of the nuts that they hide. And so they can well, it's actually how a lot of trees grow. Because they hide those nuts and they don't dig them back up. They don't always hide them in trees. They don't have like a little safe deposit box in the tree that they hide them in. They go and bury them in places and they can't find them, and they root and they grow another tree. Nature is sneaky. Nature finds a way to get its stuff done. Jan teases me a lot because one of the things about my brain is that if it's something I care about, I remember little factoids like nobody's business, and if I don't care about it, I won't remember what happened 10 minutes ago. And so I'm always spouting off with some random weird thing like that. You know, we think about if water is our emotions, then every fish is going to be good for connecting with your emotions. But that doesn't mean it's going to be a great totem if you're trying to be a predator, unless it's a shark or an orca or something like that. Most fish are prey animals. And so I think you've got to get to where you're looking at what's the good, what's the bad, what's the thing that stands out, how does this actually work, what is the quality of the animal that's there, and don't just look for the positive. And this would be one of my side tangents I told you about. In yoga we have a thing called svadhyaya, which means self-study, introspection, trying to get to understand yourself. And svadhyaya talks about seeing yourself in the story, in the TV show, in the movie, in the book you're reading, super identifying with one of the characters. And everybody's like, yeah, I've done that before. If you always identify with the hero, you're lying to yourself, because sometimes you're the villain. Sometimes you're the bad guy in the story. And if you're not willing to see your bad qualities, then you're not seeing the totality of yourself. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm saying we all have our shadow self. We all have our dark tendencies. I am a very intense, extreme person. And when that's the good side of it, everybody loves being around me. And when it's the bad side of it, everybody just wants to go home. And so if we look at that quality, everything has its pro and its con. And that con helps you a lot. You know, think about, was it koalas? They basically eat narcotics their whole life. So they're going to be a really good totem for a lot of people, except for that person who's in drug addiction recovery. This is something that literally survives on narcotic leaves. I would not want that as my totem if I was trying to get over my heroin habit. That would not be a great thing. Thank God I don't want to get over my heroin habit. It's the only way I get through these workshops. Your primary totem, the one that I say everybody says, what's my power animal? That is the animal identity. If I were an animal, this is the one I would be. And I think that we all have something that we're most like, and a lot of times you will see somebody, I always say I'm not going to get political. Tell me Mitch McConnell doesn't have a turtle totem. That dude looks like a fucking turtle all the time. Tell me he doesn't have a turtle thing. And if you see the way Congress has gone, it's pretty slow like a turtle too. And so if you get to where you look at people, a lot of times you'll see somebody like that. I talk in yoga all the time. They'll be like, how do you do those poses? How do you reach that stuff? Because I have chimpanzee arms and a giraffe neck. The floor is not nearly as far away from me as it is from a lot of people, and I'm 6 foot tall. But that's because I've got this giant wingspan that's there. And so you have different qualities that you want to look at. Some of them are going to be good, some of them are going to be bad. You know, I'm trying to think of one of the different totems I've got. I want to give you a silly example because I've been so serious the rest of the time. Hawks are considered to be the messengers of spirit. Well, that's what I do for a living, so that totem fits very well with what I do. What else do hawks do? They fly around in circles constantly, and I can get stuck in a damn loop in my life, trust me. You can get to where you're really going in circles at times. And a lot of people would look at that hawk and think, you know, wow, that's such a bold, majestic, wonderful animal, but it also can get stuck in a loop. I thought of I'm jumping back to the very beginning, sorry, but I have to include this because it's so cool the way that it happened. When I was talking about how some animals will appear to you, and this is a combination of choosing animal totem and having it present itself to you. This was a gift. This represents a Mayan eagle dancer, which means that it would be a gold eagle. Gold eagle is one of my spirit guides. Now, when he first appeared to me, he appeared to me as a Mayan shaman. I didn't like all the gold and stuff that I saw him in. And I was like, can you just be the bird? And so I started seeing him as a gold eagle. So last year when we went on this Mexican retreat, we decided to make the gold eagle or golden eagle the totem for the trip. The plane landed in Cancun. I get out of the plane, I'm walking down the thing. I look out the first window that I get to where you can see the tarmac, is that the place where all the planes are parked? I look down there, and there's a guy standing there with a gold eagle perched on his arm, no shit. And I was like, what? So, googly, they use them in Mexico to chase the pigeons and other birds off so they don't get in the engines of the plane when they take off and land. But we had set up for Gold Eagle to be our Mexican totem, and the minute I got off the plane there was a physical representation of one. And then I get back, and Jan's sister finds this at, a pawn shop or a flea market or garage sale or something. It's like, I don't know why, but this made me think of Shane. She's the same one that got this rattle for me at a garage sale with this awesome little turtle on it. Turtle is my second chakra totem. One of our yoga students for my birthday this year got me this little turtle. She had no idea. She had no way of knowing that. She got it because it was purple and it's my favorite color. It also happens to be one of the big animal totems that's there. When we find our primary totem, it's the one that we want to go to first to look at our own natural tendencies, to see the way that we tend to interact with things, and to see which chakra it actually rests in is going to tell us one of our dominant attributes. So I was named Shadow Hawk. The hawk happens to appear in my third eye, and I do readings for a living. Every bit of that makes straight line sense, if you believe in such things. And so when we get to our primary totem, we have to admit that there must be secondary totems. And these are the ones that make up all of our chakra points. And when you go through, and I'm going to show you something, you won't be able to see it really clear, but so that's the deer at my root, and his antlers form the tree, and all of those are the various different totems that are in the different chakras of my body. And so when I had that tattoo done, I told him how I wanted them, and he was like, well, this one would be better here. I was like, no, it can't go there. This one needs to be above that one, and this one needs to be at the top, and that one has to be there. And we went through all of that. This one is a phoenix. The week before I got my phoenix tattoo, I had a reading from this witch that I knew years ago, and she did casting of stones. She had ocean glass, like little pebbles from the ocean that had been rounded glass, and she'd painted her own runes, her own symbols on them, and she would take a white marker board and have you draw a circle and draw your personal symbol in it, and she would throw her runes over it, and she'd give her a reading over that. I told her nothing. She looks at all mine, she goes, well, that's the weirdest thing in the world. See how that phoenix one is resting right on top of you? It's almost like you and the phoenix are becoming one. I had already booked the tattoo to get a phoenix put on my body and made part of me. You know, super confirmation moment right there. When we begin to connect with them in those different ways, and this is an example of how you can bring them deeper into your life. When you begin to connect with them in that way and you begin to see what their purpose and what they do, it'll begin to relate to the chakras. And when you find out where your primary one is, the chakra it's in will tell you your natural strength, your natural quality, the things that you're working on in that regard. Like I said, I've got a bear in the throat chakra, and not only can I sound like a bear, I can speak just as intensely as a bear can roar. And I can also get as quiet and soft with it as one that is with its cub, because they're very sweet and very nurturing and very mothering and very loving when it comes to their cub. It's also where I like to talk about where people get masculine and feminine confused. If we think masculine is strong and feminine is weak, try to take that cub away from mother bear and then come back and tell me that story. Predator and prey. This is one of the biggest aspects. This is giant. And a lot of people don't really like the idea of being a prey animal. And yet I will challenge you right now that as I explain this, some of you are going to be like, oh my God, I must have all prey animal totems. Predators hunt. They attack, they kill, they consume. They are ruthless, they are vicious. Many of them are sneaky as hell, and some of them are just flat out aggressive and take you out. As a predator, they feel the drive for relentless pursuit. They're going to get what they're gonna get. That wolf pack chases the buffalo until they take it down. A buffalo is a prey animal. Huge, giant. Have you ever seen an actual bison? Their head's the size of this table. It's huge. And you don't want to mess with them. Those idiots at Yellowstone that want to get a picture with them. This is how you become a prey animal. The prey animal, however, is the one, this is where some of us are going to go, oh my God, the value of this. They're the ones that provide sustenance for others to keep going. They're the givers of the world. They're the nurturers of the world. They're the ones that provide the means for other people to go on. If we were to talk about the business dynamic, I'm saying just the business dynamic around here. I'm very much the predator and Jan's very much the prey because she enables me to achieve my goals in what it is that I'm doing. She does all of the stuff that I suck at and don't want to mess with so that I can do the stuff that I'm good at. And that allows us to reach the goal. And so when we think about predator versus prey, it shouldn't be versus at all. It should be predator and prey, because without the prey, they can't possibly be a predator, and without the predator, they can't possibly give the sustenance that's necessary. They can't give of themselves in the way that they're meant to. And so, just like I started that little tirade with masculine and feminine, predator and prey doesn't mean strong and weak. Because I guarantee you, the person that can be selfless for another and allow them to attain their goal is very strong.
Like an ox.
Yeah, absolutely. And ox, you know, they're actually eaten. And I think that when we get into looking at it, there's the food chain, you know, there are apex predators. Bears, I've been using that example forever. Bears actually, male bears tend to eat cubs. Like when they come out of hibernation, there's all the cubs. Out of all of the cubs that are born, only about a third to half of them make it. And one of the main reasons is because other bears kill them. And that sounds terrible, right? It's not terrible, because if it wasn't terrible, there would be nothing that thins the population of bears and the world would be overrun with them and we would all be prey animals. Because nothing can take out a 12-foot brown bear except for another 12-foot brown bear. A great white shark, I think orcas can take them down. But like an orca, what takes down a killer whale? Another killer whale. They're apex predators. They're at the top of that food chain. We are the #1 apex predator on the face of this planet. We're responsible for more deaths of animals than anything else combined ever. We are the most vicious, violent creature that has ever lived on the face of this planet. I tend to go along with the Matrix movie. I tend to think we're much more of a virus than we are animals. We outgrow our surroundings. We consume everything. We will take everything that's there, and if we completely strip it down to barren, we'll move on and do the exact same thing again somewhere else. We have zero restraint. We are predators without conscience. And we go after whatever the hell we want at whatever cost it is to anyone else. And I think that that is a really tough pill to swallow for a lot of us. Because we're like, no, we're spiritual and we're love and we're light. And we're going to go, you know, here I am the shaman, and I'm going to go get in my big gas-guzzling Jeep and drive it home to Republic in my nice, comfy, warm house where I'm going to get on Amazon and get whatever I want. And you know, you think we don't live that way? We do. And we often, not even maliciously, because it's so built into us. A wolf isn't malicious because it kills a rabbit. That's the natural order of things. That's what it does. And that rabbit, theoretically, doesn't feel bad for fulfilling its purpose, because that's the whole reason that spirit manifested in that form, was to give it a thing to eat. My husband, a lot of times, will talk about spirit, and I have my big flowery words of describing God and the universe and all that, and he'll go, it's evolution in its nature. Everything fits together, and everything that's hungry has something to eat. He's not wrong. And it's a brilliant design, because everything that's there serves a purpose to something else. It either hunts it and thins down the population. Wolves killing deer. Well, the wolves killing the deer sounds like a very violent, ugly, murderous kind of thing. If the wolf doesn't kill the deer, then Mother Nature's going to. If that herd gets too big, it will suddenly develop disease and take out half of the herd anyway, because nature has a way of staying in balance and not allowing things to become disproportionate. If the wolves become too prevalent, then rabies is going to take out half of that pack so that it can remain in balance in some regard. And so when we get all teary-eyed at the introduction to Bambi, we need to realize that too many deers isn't any healthier than too few deers. I believe they've decided that they're taking that scene out of the reboot of Bambi because it's difficult for children to watch, because Disney movies aren't full of murderous things everywhere. You know, like a beast that keeps somebody prisoner and turns people into dishes. We all get like this weird image of things in our head that might not actually be true. As an animal that is both, you need to allow yourself to feel the duality and the balance. Step into the power of living on both ends of that spectrum. And as humans, I said we're apex predators. I think that in a different way, in an emotional way, we can also be some of the greatest prey animals, because so many of us are willing to sacrifice ourselves for somebody else to get what they want, or we're willing to give up our time for somebody else. If you work a job at all, you're willing to give up your time for somebody else. And so you've got to get to where you see the value in the prey as well as the predator that is there. It makes a giant difference. If we talk about the different animals that are there, we want to talk about ways of deepening the connection that's there. And this is where we get into the fun part of the workshop. Real quick, we've got about 45 minutes left of this. Does anybody need a bathroom break? Let's take a quick 5 minutes. Everybody stretch your legs, all of that sort of stuff. The bathroom's right over there. I'm going to get myself a drink of water. We'll come right. Now, when we're talking about... Are we rolling? We got all this stuff? When we're talking about deepening the connections, so deepening the connection starts with finding the totem. We spent the first half talking about how you can do that. It's going to present itself to you. It's the repeating thing or the thing that demands your attention. It's what you've called out for, or it's something you've meditated on. Once you find that totem that's there, the key is to begin to deepen the connection with it. And I'm going to use, some of these are traditional terms, or at least one of them, and it tends to throw people off the very first one. It's called a fetish. And in Native American beliefs, a fetish is something that actually ties you literally to that animal. I put on my medicine bag because I'm doing a shaman workshop, but the other reason is because the woman who trained me was from the Black Bear clan, and so there is a black bear claw in this bag. And that black bear claw would be a fetish. It's something that actually connects you to that thing. And so fetishes here, this would be a macaw fetish because these are actual feathers from the first macaw that I owned. That shell would count because there was a live creature that was in that shell at one time, and so that's an element of earth to be able to connect, or water, I mean, to connect with those sorts of things. Then we get into idols, and this would be like an idol, or this little raven crow would be an idol, or a turtle, or a macaw here, that sort of a thing. Watching the animals, studying, I said watch your documentaries, you know, thank you for National Geographic, you can learn about a whole lot of animals, and we live in the age of streaming, so you don't have to wait for it to come on. When we got back, it was so crazy. When we got back last year and we had the Gold Eagle thing, every time I turned on my TV, because we watch a lot of documentaries, it would be, do you guys know who David Attenborough is? I love David Attenborough, like the greatest narrator of all time. And here's David Attenborough going, and the gold eagle in its natural habitat is, and I'm like, every time I turned on my TV, there was an image of this gold eagle there. And it would go to the point that I remember one day I drove past Gold Eagle Trucking Company that had an eagle graphic on their truck. You get to where there's just so many different things that show up there. The eating as the animal would eat. You know, you want to get in touch with your bear totem? Now, this will blow you away. Most people are like, well, then eat some salmon. Yeah, except that they're omnivores. 90% of their diet is non-meat substance. They eat berries and roots and grasses and various things like that. Bears are 90% herbivore, and when they eat meat, it's typically salmon. They will eat some scavenger meats, and they will kill some small animals, but for the most part, they like salmon and stuff like that, especially grizzlies, Kodiaks. they only eat the head. Because the brain is the most nutritious part. And they know that. And so they'll actually, now, the more, brains, the more scarce the other food supply comes, the more of the fish they eat. But overall in their diet, it's like 90%, 10% leaning towards berries and things like that. If you want to get in touch with what it is, and this one sounds so on the nose, but I love stuff like that. If you're trying to get in touch with your water totem, if you're trying to get in touch with something like a fish, eat fish. That's all they have available. They're in the water. And so you actually start eating stuff that matches and mimics what's there. If you're talking about something that eats seeds, include some seeds into your diet. If it's something that is full out predator, you're going to go carnivore diet. It's even called carnivore diet. You get into where you're eating that meat. And in that regard, some people in here might be vegetarian. I used to be a vegetarian. I'm not anymore. I think that appreciating your food wherever it comes from and making sure that it's sourced in a proper way is the healthiest version for yourself and whatever it is that you're eating. And so being very conscientious of that. Raccoons, if you have a raccoon totem, then make sure that, you should do this anyway, but make sure you clean all of your food because you have a very sensitive system and they scrub their food before they eat it, everything. And so you look at the mannerisms and it doesn't just show you what to eat, but it shows you how to eat it. If you've got a totem, this one's going to be absurd in the example I'm giving, but let's say that you want to lose weight and you have a cow as a totem. That's going to tell you that you want a grazing diet. You actually want to eat very small amounts 5 or 6 times through the day and you will tend to lose weight. Or you find out that you have like an alligator totem. They will eat once, sometimes even a week. They will go days between eating. And so that would be our intermittent fasting way of losing weight. And so when we find that totem, and more specifically when we go, I want to lose weight, and we start calling out for totems and one presents itself, then we study what it eats, how often it eats, how much it eats. Because some animals eat to completely fill themselves up and they don't eat for days or weeks, and some of them literally graze all day long in the way that they eat. So you're learning not just what type of food to eat, but how often to consume and how to take it into your body, all of these sorts of things. And then we get into the fun stuff. Get a stuffed animal. Put a picture of it on your phone. Get little statues of it and put around. Get pictures. We have 3 or 4 different bear pictures in our house. I've got hawk feathers. I didn't say that out loud because it's illegal. Macaw feathers. I have an African gray parrot, which is an all gray parrot with red tips on its tail feathers. And one of my clients made me this awesome stained glass sun catcher last year to represent it. So this is going to be, I guess, an idol or an image, I would call this one, of something to connect with that African gray parrot. Factoid, African gray parrots are the second smartest land-dwelling creature. We're first, they're second. The only thing that's smarter than an African gray parrot other than a person is a dolphin, but they're not land-dwelling, they're water-dwelling. And so when we think about intelligent of animals, African gray parrots, look this up because it'll blow your mind. There's an African gray named Alex, he's died, but the videos are still out there. These people went and got this bird at a pet store. It was not a special bird at all. It was a random African gray at a pet store. And they decided to teach it as a flock. So there was a trainer, and the secondary trainer pretended they were a bird. And so the trainer would say something to the secondary trainer, and the trainer would do the thing, and they would give them a treat. And Alex began to see that. Alex got to where he had this extensive vocabulary with recognition. They could hold up 5 different keys of different colors made of different things. And they would hold one up and go, what color? Green. What material? And he'd touch it, plastic. They determined, this is the part I love so much, they determined that the bird had an 85% accuracy rating, but they determined that actually had a 100% accuracy rating, it just had a bad attitude. Because one day they set out 5 keys in different colors and they said, pick up the green one, and he said no. And they said, Alex, pick up the green one. And one at a time, he picked up every other one and dropped it off the table until only the green one was left sitting there. And if that doesn't blow your mind, they brought in a guest trainer one day to study it. Well, Alex called the male trainer daddy and called the female trainer mommy. He didn't have a name for that one, so he started calling them by the color shirt they were wearing. It would be like, hey, tan jacket, over here. You know, and he would call out and say he wanted his pasta. And I believe the person was wearing a yellow shirt, as the story goes, to be like, yellow shirt, pasta. And he was trying to actually tell them what he wanted, and he was telling a specific person what he wanted. So when we get so arrogant thinking we're the only smart thing on this planet, we are missing it giantly. When we get into things like that, and we get into the communication, we step into what I think is one of the most powerful ways of drawing that quality of an animal in that could possibly be there, which is shape-shifting. It's not going to be nearly as cool as it sounds, but it's still pretty cool. You don't actually turn into the animal. You don't werewolf it, even though a lot of people really wish you would. You mimic the animal's behavior. You actually act like that animal would. And so when I'm trying to tell people like a hawk totem, and I used to teach a kids yoga class, we would have, kids. And we would have the parents come in so that they were there with the kids. So it was mommy and me yoga, except there was one dad instead of mom. And I would have the mother do mountain pose, and I would have the kids be the hawk flying around the mountain. And they would have their wings out, and they would go all the way around one way and then all the way back around the other way. Looks a lot like this, doesn't it? The Native Americans have an entire thing called the eagle dancer, who is somebody who dresses up in something that looks very much like this, and they come out and they swoop way down like the eagle diving, and then they come back up and they do this elaborate, ornate dancing with it, and this wing comes in and then that one goes out, and they're mimicking the eagle, because the eagle to the Native Americans is a representation of great spirit, and so they want to honor it, and the best way to honor something is imitation. Imitation is flattery. And so we get into mimicking those things that are there. Jan said it earlier. When she wants to go to sleep, she pretends that she's a bear hibernating. She curls up into that position like a bear, and it helps her to go to sleep. That's shape-shifting in a physical quality. That's taking on that energy of that animal that's there. You know, I love this one. Everybody stand up a second. Set your stuff down, stand up just a second. So the number one that I've been talking about this whole time is bear. You want to do bear totem? Take your feet a little bit apart, bend your knees, get your claws, and then do this. You look like a bear. Now do this. You really look like a bear. And it's that simple. We actually think about all of the qualities of that animal and we mimic it in that way. Now that'll sound silly when I'm like, okay, everybody stand up and do this. But I want you to picture, years ago I had a client, she was going through a divorce. And it was an extremely abusive relationship, and the guy had his bluff in on her, and she was terrified of him. She was afraid to face him in court. And if you've never been in a situation like that, if you can't understand what I just said, take a moment and pray gratitude. If you've never been so afraid of confronting something that you're afraid to even step in the room with it, be thankful. Be thankful you don't have that experience. But she was absolutely terrified. Now this was intuition. I would like to say I was this smart, but it was just an intuitive thing. I said, we're going to get you a bear totem. And when you walk in there, you're going to, before you go to court, I want you to stand like this, and I want you to stand like this, and I want you to imagine that you're a big, powerful bear, and I want you to imagine that there's another big, powerful bear standing behind you, and I want you to imagine what messes with a bear. Nothing. He's not going to mess with you. Saw her a week later. I go, how'd it go? She goes, dude, I did the stuff. And then I walked in there and I sat down, and over the judge is the Missouri State Seal with two bears facing each other, and I knew I had him. She won her case. And she wasn't afraid. She was able to give her testimony. She was able to talk about the horrible things that he had done to her without collapsing into the emotions, because she had embodied the energy of the bear. And then as the sidekicker, there happened to be the bear on the state seal that I hadn't thought of. And that allowed her to see that thing that was there. I will tell people a lot of times, and they don't have to be real. I mean, you can buy actual bear claws or wolf talons or various things like this. You can also get metal cast ones and various things like that. You can go to a Dollar General and find little toy animals of tigers and lions and various things like this. And if you actually take those and allow yourself to mimic it, to pretend that that's it. If you're having, I'm going to throw some yoga in here. If we're having a really difficult time and we're feeling like life is just attacking us, go into a child's pose. You guys know child's pose. You get all the way down on the floor. You look like a turtle, don't you? Now you got your shell up over your back and you're totally protected and you're pulled into yourself and nothing can get to you. And that's why that pose is so nurturing and relaxing when we get into it, because we've actually balled up into our own self. Or think about when you get around people. What does a cat do when it actually likes you? If a cat likes you and trusts you, the number one thing that it does is it exposes its belly to you. It will show you its softest, most vulnerable underside. And so if we're trying to open up to people, then we quit sitting like this. We actually open up and expose that part of ourselves, and we're mimicking that cat that is there, that is showing us that vulnerability is okay once we've established trust. And so we're getting into the mimicry of these animals so that we can borrow their energy, borrow their power, borrow whatever it is that we're wanting there. When I talk about the macaws, of course macaws are a totem of mine. I wish somebody had a word count of everything I've said since we sat down here an hour and 40 minutes ago. I can pump some words out. They're very vocal. I'm very vocal. They're very colorful. I look very muted today. You should see some of the crazy shit I wear. I believe in being very flamboyant and expressive and out there, and my totems tend to match that in a lot of ways. And so when you think about the idea of how can I mimic that totem, how can I pretend to be that thing, how can I study it, get an image of it, learn its behavior, learn how it moves. So I'll give you a great one. Let's say that you're alone in life and you want a partner to share your life with. I'm not talking to you, Jan. This isn't just for you.
You got my attention.
I assumed I did. Let's say that you want that. And let's say that you find that you have a peacock totem. Peacocks have an entire mating dance with those feathers coming out and showing themselves to the world and dancing around and strutting in this certain way. Imagine if you did that. Or as a lady, you would look at what the peahen does when that dance is being performed and how they respond to it. Or you study the mating ritual of that tortoise or whatever animal it might happen to be. And you know, I'm talking about in the privacy of your own home, but you actually go through that mating dance, or you try to mimic that call that's there, because you're not trying to get a rhinoceros to marry a mouse. You're trying to get something that's your equal, your vibe, your match, the thing that's the same as you, that's going to complement you. And so you actually figure out, are you male, are you female? You want the other one or you want the same one? you mimic that part of the mating dance or call or ritual of that animal just to draw somebody in energetically into your world, and now you're using animal totems to find your life partner. There's a fun exercise you can do. I did this with my husband when we first met. I was telling him about all this stuff, and you got to understand the poor boy. When we met 22 years ago or whatever it is at this point, we met and I handed him a business card because I thought it would make it easier. And I was like, oh, you're the one. Cool, I've been waiting for you. We're going to be together for the rest of our life. And he was like, okay, creepy stalker. And I was like, no, look at my business card. It says psychic. That explains everything. And he's like, no, really, it doesn't. And I said, take all the time you need. You'll figure it out eventually. So I'm hanging out at his house, his apartment one of these nights early on, and he's like, so what does shaman mean? And we got into animal totems. And he goes, so you mean like my cat? And I was like, maybe, but I doubt it. And he goes, well, how will I know what they are? And I said, I guarantee you we can come up with all 7 of them sitting right here in your living room. And he goes, how you figure? And I said, well, right there you've got a little jade horse statue. And he said, my grandmother gave me that. And I was like, okay, so you've got a horse totem. And I said, well, in that Chicago Bulls emblem over there, you've got a bull totem. And, well, that little stuffed bear there, you've got a bear totem. Chicago Bears. And as we went, a lot of sports stuff, but as we went through, we found 7 representation of animals that were right there in his living room. And I started explaining the characteristics of all of them. And he's like, you just described me. I was like, no, I just described your animal totems. That's why they're your animal totems. And that was one of the early on first moments that it blew his mind, and he's like, okay, maybe there's something to this guy. Maybe it's not just a bunch of crazy woo-woo stuff. And we continued through that in like everything we've done, every different topic. I've tried to prove myself every step of the way with it. And you'll find that as you develop into them, to a great degree, it becomes easier and easier and easier because you're learning to speak that language. And so one of the things I would like for us to do as a bit of an exercise here today, and it's going to be different for everybody. We're all going to have different animals and different stuff here. I want to take this drum and my new beater. I got this for my birthday from Jan. Can you see the head? You see the gold eagle that's there, since that's what we're working with. And so this is a beater for the drum. It's in a gold eagle. I gotta rest this on my leg. So what we're gonna do is I'm going to ask all of you to close your eyes in just a moment. You don't have to do it yet. But we're going to close our eyes and we're going to go into calling those 4 directions, air, earth, fire, and water. And I'm going to ask you to allow an animal to appear to you. Now, the key to this is, it's the hardest thing. It is so hard. No judgment and no do-overs. We don't get to decide that we hate the fact that we got an earthworm. If you got an earthworm, you got an earthworm. We have to go with whatever it is that shows up there. And we have to allow ourselves to see it, to feel it, to simply know it. When I say see something, some of you aren't visual in the way you process things. Some of you will hear the word, it's a rhinoceros. Okay, it's going to be a rhinoceros then. And you're going to have something that comes in. Maybe it's just a knowing. Maybe you don't hear a word. Maybe you don't see anything. Maybe you just know what the heck it is. Whatever it is that comes through, I want you to imagine that. We're going to do a drumming to call it, because I'm showing you that we can call them in any number of ways. I could light a candle to draw it in. I could beat a drum to draw it in. I could do a spell to call it in. I could chant to call it in. I could do a nature hike to see what shows up to me, all sorts of things. And once it presents itself to you, then I'm going to talk you through very, 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 very brief the idea of shape-shifting mentally into it. Now, if you want to do a physical action that goes along with it while you're sitting, the good news is everybody's eyes will be closed, except for mine, but you can go into it without anybody looking at you and seeing what's going on, because some of it feels weird. Some of it feels a little self-conscious until you get used to it being your practice. I want to tell you before we jump into that, because I'll forget it if I don't, and I'll remember because I'm holding all this. One of my main totems is a black panther, and I have to tell you one of the most profound versions of that, and it will help you to open up your mind in working with them. There are no black panthers in Missouri except for possibly zoos, right? So I've had a black panther totem forever. When Scott and I did a big manifesting thing to get a new house, and the short version of the story is that I did a big energetic thing, and a person that I never met called me the next day and said, "You want to buy a house for me?" And when I said, "Sure, but I got no credit," he owner financed the whole thing. And we went and looked at 2 houses that day. The first one that we pulled up to, there was a black cat in the driveway. And as soon as we got there, I was like, "I'll take it." And he goes, "Do you want to see inside?" I was like, "Sure, but that's my black panther totem. I know it's the right place for me to be." We have been in that house 14 years. Sebastian, as we named him, still lives in the yard.
Wow.
14 years later, that totem is still with us. So when I'm saying totem, and you see something itty bitty or small or this, but you think it represents something bigger, that's okay. And for this exercise in particular, I want you to just go with it. So let's all close our eyes. A couple deep breaths. Settling into your space. Big breaths in, slow breaths out. Because we're practicing shamanism, grandmother, grandfather, spirits of the 4 winds, powers of the 7 directions, archangels and angels, spirit guides and animal totems, ancestors and bright shining ones, ascended shamans, masters, yogis and gurus, illuminated spirits, one and all, we call upon you, and in particular we call upon the Thunderbird. And we ask that the king of the animal totems send to each one of the people gathered here the totem that they most need to connect with here in this day, the one that represents what they're working with, what they need, that will help them in whatever capacity. And we're going to call out with the sound of this drum, and we ask that totem respond to the sound of this drum and come to each person, revealing themselves to them in whatever way they can accept it, they can acknowledge it, they can connect with it. Great Mystery, Great Spirit, we ask for this blessing, and we call upon the Thunderbird here and now. Aho ado, wantankasa. I want you to imagine that you're outside in nature. A nice, warm, beautiful summer's day. I want you to imagine the green grass at your feet and the blue sky up above you. Feel the warmth of the sun shining down upon you. Take in the sights, the sounds, the smells, the feeling of being outside in nature on a beautiful, warm summer's day. And as you look off into the distance, I want you to imagine that you see storm clouds slowly beginning to roll in. Imagine that the air itself gets a little cooler. Imagine what it would be like to smell the rain before it even falls. See the clouds beginning to gather up above you. Allow the clouds to become dark, filled with water and power and energy. Allow yourself to see the flash of lightning and hear the crash of the thunder. Nice deep breaths, feeling the rootedness of your feet connecting with the earth. Feeling the fire every time the lightning flashes. Feel the wind not blowing on you, but blowing through you, allowing you to become one with it. Imagine the rain beginning to fall. Let it first touch your skin, and then allow it to flow through your entire being. In this moment, absolutely becoming one with all of the elements of nature. You're safe, you're protected, you're surrounded, you're blessed. Now I want you to find one place in that sky, in the flashing lightning, in the dark clouds, and the rolling thunder. And I want you to imagine, whether you see it, feel it, simply know that it's there. Allow the Thunderbird to emerge. See a mighty, giant bird with an expansive wingspan. The flash of lightning in its eyes. And imagine as it spirals and circles and then gently lands in front of you. Imagine what it would be like to be standing outside in nature, looking into the flashing lightning eyes of the Thunderbird itself. And as you acknowledge this amazing creature, I want you to allow the storm to begin to pass, but the Thunderbird to remain. And it has a gift for you, and that gift is the animal totem that you are meant to work with first and primary. And I want you to imagine it beginning to become blurry and shapeless and without form, but a presence in front of you nonetheless. And then I want you to imagine it beginning to coalesce and to take a shape of whatever animal is meant to present itself to you. Listen to the sound of the drum. Breathe deep. Allow the image, the thought, the word, the awareness to simply form in your mind. As you see this animal taking shape in front of you, ask yourself, is this predator? Is this prey? Is it both? Does it live on the land? Does it fly through the air, swim through the water, or possess the fire? Or is it a mix of two or more of these things? Whatever you see, know, or feel directly in front of you, predator or prey, the element that is dominant with it, imagine yourself beginning to mirror that. Allow your feet to turn into paws, or claws, or fins, or talons. Allow your skin to shift and to change, becoming smooth or rough or covered in feathers or scales. Imagine your arms being front legs or fins or wings. Imagine the shape of your own face beginning to shift to match the creature in front of you. Feel the energy that connects you and take that animal into your own self, feeling every part of your body beginning to shift, to mirror, and to match that creature. And then in your own mind, I want you to think about what qualities, what powers, what strengths and abilities does it hold? What limitations, what negative attributes does it possess? Taking just a few moments to allow yourself to fully and totally connect with this totem that has presented itself to you. Allowing yourself to take in not just the shape, but the characteristics. Allowing it to tell you what its purpose in your life is. And then finally having an awareness of which chakra it would reside in. Take a full, deep breath. Acknowledge the creature that you see in front of you and what you feel inside of your own self. Give thanks and gratitude for that animal presenting itself and for giving you its power and its strength and the awareness of its weakness. And then allow yourself to let go of the image, the shape shifting, and every transformation that has occurred. Imagine that animal departing in a natural way for it to do so. Take one more deep breath, and then simply open your eyes. Now, one of the things that happens and stuff like this, that took 6 minutes. We spent 6 whole minutes there. The reason I'm saying that is I want you to imagine if you spent half an hour. Imagine if you spent an hour. Imagine if you made an afternoon of this. Now, just real quick, did we connect with something? Did we see something? Did we get an animal? Did we get something? I thought there wasn't when I saw the look on your face. And that's okay, because what we've learned is one of the techniques to connect with it. And I said this to you guys earlier, that I want you to find the one thing you can take out of what has happened today. And if you connected with what it is, you have found one of your primary totems. Hopefully, you found what it is, what energy it is, what it carries, all of that, and maybe even what chakra it went in. If we didn't get all those pieces, that's not a loss, that's still a partial win. If we're willing to participate in spiritual growth, it's a win. But I want us to get to the point where we realize, I think in spirit stuff we overcomplicate things. Most people have taken a 2-hour workshop and made half an hour of doing what we just did. And you might have gotten a little more out of that specific part. I won't deny that. But did you guys get, for the most part, how just that drum beat suddenly made everything work? We didn't do a big giant breath practice. I didn't count you down in hypnosis. We didn't do a bunch of fancy stuff. I beat a drum and just started talking and holding the space. And we started with something that is incredibly familiar. We all know what it's like to stand outside under the sun with the wind blowing on us. We all know what it's like for a thunderstorm to roll in. So you start with things that are super easy to imagine. Things that are super, super, super easy to connect with. And then you ask for the deeper stuff to come out of that. You don't start with, Spirit, show me my animal totem. You start with building up to that and giving it a way to birth into your consciousness, to appear in your mind, to register in your process. Now, I know because I see 2 or 3 of you wiping tears out of your eyes that there was some sort of profound connection that came with that. Maybe an awareness of what it was trying to give you, or the power that it was trying to offer you. Or maybe even the awareness of the negative aspect that, wow, I see that thing I really need to work on. And when we get to where we're willing and open and allow those things to flow, and we start with the familiar and allow it to go into the deeper, then we have started on a true spiritual journey. And I think that if you can take the idea of predator, prey, the element it comes from, what shape does it take, start with that thunderbird, start with the simple energy or images. I would love for each and every one of you to replicate what we did here today in your own version and take the time. If you don't have a drum, that's okay. Go listen to the river run until it gets you there. Actually find a day where it's raining and go outside and take in all of those elements. Find a beautiful sunny day and just spritz a little water on your face. You'll be okay. Allow yourself to connect with it in some way and realize that all spirituality is a journey. We never start at the end. We start at the very beginning of understanding, and we add piece by piece, bit by bit, more and more every single day. And whatever animal you got today, whatever it was, go home and study it. Look it up, Google it, watch a documentary on it, watch YouTube videos on it, go to the zoo and observe it, read a book about it, get a stuffed animal that mimics it, put a picture of it on your phone, find a fetish or a statue or an idol or a symbol or something to take it deeper in there. Start working with it, and it will get stronger and stronger and stronger. And the more you connect to that first one, the easier the other ones will start to come in, one after another, after another, after another. Does that make sense? If you will do that, well, let's not say if you'll do that, let's say with what you guys just did, you can never again say that you have not worked with an animal totem. With what we just did here today, you can all walk out of here saying that you have conjured, called upon, and worked with an animal totem. And if you will validate that, validate what you did, what I did was just make noise and guide something. If you'll validate what you just did, you've started one of the first steps towards truly empowering yourself on your medicine walk, on your spirit journey. And you can use that to expand out into all sorts of stuff. I hope you found mind-blowing, amazing, thorough everything. What I hope more than anything, because it's practical, is you found the one thing that will help you today. It might not even be about animals. It might be about something entirely different. But if you find that one thing that you can take out of this room and plug into your practice, your life, your thoughts, your perception of the world, then you have grown spiritually. And if you keep doing that, your life just gets fuller and fuller and fuller. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate every single one of you. I say this at every single workshop that I do. If there's a simple thing that you have a question about that came up out of this, send me an email or something through the website or the app. If you've got something that is a lot more in-depth that you want to get into, get hold of me or Jan or the online scheduler, and we'll get you in here and we'll help to work you through it. Otherwise, thank you all for coming very, very much.